Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about eating disorders. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I pulled out a taboo. Let's be honest, this is a taboo. So, luckily for me, I have a special guest, Heather, who's here to share perspective on this topic, and I'll be picking her brain throughout the whole time. So, thank you so much, Heather, for coming on my show. I appreciate your time. How are you doing today?
Thanks for inviting me. I am doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Awesome, awesome. So let's go ahead and just rip off that band-aid. One of the things that's really interested got my interest when you sent me your interest to being on my show was how you said that you had a disordered eating that led to an eating disorder. And that right there, oh, that statement alone in that one sentence truly got me thinking like that is a very interesting way to think about eating disorders. It's truly a disordered eating, and it just shows that, well, I guess more so my question is, do you think it's our relationship with food that causes this disordered eating that leads to an eating disorder?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think so much of the time we have this. I love how you said it's a taboo topic because, like, we kind of have this taboo around food. We don't have a healthy relationship with food. We don't really get taught about proper nutrition. Our parents tell us, you can't eat this, but they don't really tell us why. And it gets
Mhm.
very internalized.
Yes, yes, that's very true. It does get internalized. That is a good point. They tell us not to eat something, but then we can eat it later on, or we can't eat it at a certain time, or we can't eat it at all, but they have no explanation. And the ones who do give explanation to the kids, well, I applaud you parents because not many parents actually provide explanation. It's I do what I say what I do. So listen to me, and that's it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy to think, when did you realize that you had a bad relationship with food?
Mm.
That's a
Uh,
thinker.
I think that's one of the things you don't really realize that you have a bad relationship with food because it just becomes so normal that women undereat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we're always pressured to appear a certain way and not to eat so much because then our appearance will no longer look a certain way. I mean, I remember growing up, one of my sisters is bigger, and she always got pressured to lose weight, always got pressured and bribed and just made fun of just because of her weight ever since she was a little girl. And I truly believe it really affected her now, still to her adult life, where her relationship with food isn't correct. It's it's seen more as a comfort, and a lot of people see food as comfort. But for you, what was food to you?
Hmm.
Was it considered to be a comfort, or was it considered to be, something frowned upon? Because a lot of the times I hear that food is, when you have an eating disorder, you don't want food because you don't want it to stay in your body because it'll eventually make you fat. I mean, that's what I hear, but I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, what is your opinions on that?
I think that's part of it. Like for me, I I mean, yeah, I didn't want food in my body because it would make me fat, but it was kind of just, yeah, I mean, like all food was bad. Like nothing was good. And it's like when it got to that point where, because a lot of the time what happens is then survival instincts kick in and you binge eat. So
Yes.
so it would be for me, instead of like binge eating, I would eat like a salad once a week and that would like satisfy it temporarily.
Wow. Wow, that's intense. But it gets me thinking because at some point in time, we actually normalized eating disorders. And
Mhm.
I would say maybe in the early 2000s. It was huge. Everybody came out talking about how they had an eating disorder, how they were anorexic or they were bulimic. And it's crazy how in certain industries, especially in the fashion and in being a celebrity status, they have that stigma to have eating disorders and it's actually promoted. I mean, what is your opinions on that?
Yeah, I will say I'm very happy that that's not the case as much as it used to be. But I mean, yeah, growing up in the early 2000s, it's like if you were, for me, I was very pale. I tanned easily, but I was still pale. I was chubby, had brown hair, completely opposite of like Britney and Christina, right? And it was only okay to be to have curves if you weren't white.
That's interesting. That is interesting. That's an interesting point of view coming from a white person because as a Hispanic person, it was still frowned upon. We weren't allowed to to have a body. You know what I mean? It wasn't until later on until oh, it is what it is. You have a body, but majority of the times I got made fun of just because I had an ass or I had boobs and I developed early because I got my period when I was 8. So as soon as I started developing and going through those period situations, I was automatically fat and obese because I was already developing a body and everybody expected me to have this thin paper body and it's just unrealistic. So I think it's interesting that you said that because it makes me realize like, there's exceptions to our body image in different cultures and different races because I can see that as a white woman you would feel the need to stay in that quota and not and because you're right they don't give excuses for why you have a body you're just fat and I think that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Mhm.
Every woman's body is different. It doesn't matter what race you are, what culture you come from, no matter what you type of foods you were raised eating. It's just our bodies are just all different. And I think
Mhm.
that's really crazy to think about. I mean, what is your opinions on that?
I mean, yeah, totally. Like for me, I'm definitely more ample on the bottom, but I'm also tall. I'm 5'8". And
Oh,
so
yeah.
for there's a lot of the time, like you see people and they're like, oh, I'm an extra small, I'm a size small. Like for me, I can never be a size small, no matter how thin I get, because, well, I have an ample bottom, I have bigger legs, I work out, so there's the muscle as well. And it's actually very unrealistic for people that tall to be smaller than a size medium unless that's how you're naturally built.
That's true. That is absolutely true. That is very true. Because my cousin, she was 5'11" when we were just, I think, like 13 years old. And she was always the size medium large, but she was very, like, she was really skinny. She played basketball. She was always in sports. That she ate healthy. I mean, there was no problem with her, but she always considered to be big just because she's tall. And that's not fair. It's not fair. I mean, the people don't take that into consideration. And it sucks because when you're short like me, you consider to be an Oompa Loompa if you're bigger than 130 pounds, and it's just because of our short stature, and these beauty regulations to be considered beautiful, do you think that had a really big impact on these eating disorders and disordered eating that was really big back then? Because now, yes, it's still there, it's still here. We hear it all the time when people body shame, but it's more of an assistance when somebody comes out and speaks out about having an eating disorder or an unhealthy relationship with food.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Like people kind of forget that the individual is part of society. Like it's individual people that make up a societies. And so we need to think about the individuals of that. But I think honestly, like it's not so much what we see on TV in the media, but it's what we're told by our peers, by our family. And are
Yeah,
they influenced by the media? Yeah, sure. Are they influenced by what they grew up with? Yeah, of course they are.
that's true.
But
That's a very good point.
it's it's so like because the focus is so externalized, you never know how it's going to happen. And I mean, eating disorder, like a lot of people don't really think about it this way. So this might be a little controversial, but I believe that having like body image issues and like being obsessed with the way your body looks is the same type of addiction as with drugs, alcohol, because you're still in the thought loops. There's still craving. There's, it gives off the same responses.
Yes, yes. Said that. I'm so glad you said that. It was actually going to be one of my questions. So good job. You got it on points already. I was about to ask that, but you got it. You hit it on the nail, Heather. Thank you for saying that. It needs to be understood. Yes, it's the peers, the people that are around, the people that are in your inner circle really do have a big effect on it. And especially your body image, that does become an addiction because you're constantly checking yourself out. You're constantly looking at yourself. You're constantly weighing yourself. And it's never enough. And once you get to that never enough mindset, it becomes that obsession, addiction mindset that you don't need meth or crack or coke or any of those drugs that people think of when they think of addiction. I mean, addiction can be in anything, in everything. And I say that all the time. So thank you for saying that because, man, people in the back, you need to listen. So I guess my question is, when did you realize like I need to start having a better, healthier relationship with food in for your life?
So for me, it was, I had this realization that my self worth was tied to the way that I looked. And I was in my mid 20s when this happened.
Okay.
And I realized, like, oh, whenever a relation, like a romantic relationship started going south, I started gaining weight because I had so much of my worth tied into my appearance. And it's like, oh, things are going south. That means there's something wrong with me and like all these things. And when I had that realization of, oh my God, like I lose weight after we break up and I gain weight right before the breakup. Ooh, there's something going on under here.
Yes, yes, it's that pattern. Yes, I'm so glad you say that. You've been giving some great points because truly, once we realize like there's a pattern in my life, there's something that's just that what's the main denominator, as I say in math.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you. It's you. It's it's you. You are the ultimate key points in your life for why things are continuously happening to you. So I guess my question is, what's your medicine? Like, what is your Zen? What do you do to really calm the Heather brain down?
Oh man, I love that you asked this too, because I feel like in the body image space, this isn't talked about enough because it's so much about don't worry about how you look. Like, just like love yourself, have a happy relationship with food. And it goes so much deeper than that because the thing that happens is when people have like disordered eating, eating disorders, the only reason they're able to do that is because they become disconnected from their body. They go into a dissociated state. Like it's a response to trauma, and
Yes.
trauma causes us to dissociate. And the less
Yes.
we come back to our bodies, the more we're disconnected and in those like anxious thought loops, the negative thought loops. And so the very first thing that I do is I work with the nervous system. I work with calming the body, coming back to our bodies, because so much of us live our life in our heads. And we're these like floating head things that are taking in information, but like we don't actually feel safe within ourselves.
Goodness, Heather, I need to get a mic to this drop. This is a pencil drop because goodness, that's all I have on my hand right now. Because that was beautifully said. We don't. We don't come back to the key points of the trauma. We don't come back to calming our nervous system down, coming back to reality, because we put ourselves in this high pedestal that we can't even keep up and actually climb up. But we have these perfection ideas of what should be perfected for us, and then we implement it on others, and then we start judging them because they don't meet our imaginary standards that we can't even imaginarily comprehend to even be on, and it's ridiculous.
Mm.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and it feels like sometimes that we're sabotaging ourselves. I mean, what do you think on that?
Yeah. I mean, we we are sabotaging ourselves. And I think it's, I always say like no blame, shame, or shade. You don't know until you know. And
Yes.
so much of us are living unconsciously. Like we don't think about how like binge watching TV affects us. We don't think about how scrolling on social media affects us. And one of the things too is, and some people are going to get called out, they complain about certain accounts, just don't follow them.
Oh my goodness. Say it again for the people in the back, Heather, because goodness gracious, if you don't like it, then why are you following it? Why are you hurting yourself doing that? Thank you, Heather. I swear, I hope the people in the back are listening because goodness gracious. I swear this needs to be said. People really need to think about their lives differently because it truly impacts them. Where if you have one issue, like relationship issues, financial issues, things, unable to maintain a job, maybe that comes to where's your trauma? Have you dealt with it? Where's your state of mind? Is it at peace with where you are at in life? If you answer no, that you don't want to deal with it, well, then maybe that's the first problem. Maybe that's the first problem that you need to deal with it. And that's why I love the fact that you said that it wasn't until you were in your mid 20s that you had this realization and that pattern because people in their teens, they feel like you're supposed to already know. You know what I mean? You're supposed to already been there, know that. And to be honest, I wasn't into my mid 20s, early 20s, where I was just like, something has to give. Something has to give. Something's not right. Because when you're a teen, you're under your parents', house, and you're just accustomed to think whatever that your parents tell you to think. But as soon as you get a taste of the real world, you realize, whoa, I don't have to think this way. And and I feel like teens now are starting to question their environments at that age, which is going to help them in the long run. And I think that's necessary. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on my show because eating disorders starts at a young age. You know what I mean? Really starts at a young age. And when it happens when you're older, it's usually coming out of fear of it, unacceptance. You know what I mean? And that fear that's there and it lingers. So I'm curious, Heather, what would you tell your younger self if you could tell your younger self anything? What would you tell little Heather?
Oh, oh, I tell little Heather this all the time. You are safe and you are loved and you are perfect exactly as you are.
I love that response. I love to ask this question. This is my new thing that I'm doing where I'm asking my guests, what would they tell their younger selves? Because I am truly getting a different response each time. And I love it. And I love it because I hope my listeners are listening to each one because when you put it together, it becomes like a big puzzle and you realize the bigger whole is love and patience and understanding and time and no rush, because goodness, when we're young, we rush and we're always moving about and we don't feel loved and we don't feel admired and we don't feel worthy because we don't feel impactful. But in reality, as you are growing at such a young state in your life, you can impact so much. You know what I mean? And I'm so glad that that's what you would tell your younger self. That's some great words, some great, great words. So I'm just curious, why come up and share this information with other people?
Because I mean it's simple. I didn't want people to suffer as much as I did. I always knew from a young age that I wanted to help people. I didn't really know how, but I knew that I wanted to do it. And I mean, yeah, there's so many people out there that are suffering. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at the statistics, like eating disorders, it's an epidemic. And there are so many people like me. I went to a therapist a little bit. I didn't really like therapy because I was so in my head already. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many people that don't get formal treatment. And so the numbers are even higher than the
Mm-hmm.
statistics say.
Oh, absolutely. I honestly believe any statistic that's out there is not even rationally close to being the real statistics because half of the time, the people who are dealing with the problem are not going to be the one actually us filling out that survey. You know what I mean? They're not going to let that person stop them at the mall or at the outlet or anywhere or even online. They're not going to fill it out. They're not going to do that. They're the ones that are living their lives, dealing with it, moving with emotions and just trying to evolve in a way that is just baby steps. It's truly is baby steps, And so somebody told me that podcasting and listening to podcasts and all the different varieties of shows that are out there, that has been a form of therapy, And I think that, a small degree of it is because you can hear other people, you can hear their stories, you can hear their testimonies. And I truly do believe that this is another form, a way of bringing light onto so many dim topics, and that's why I started my show. But but to start wrapping up the show, what can be some great words of wisdom that you can leave us all with? Even though you already gave us some great information to think about and some great ideas and tips about our lives and how we perceive it differently, but what can be some lasting words you can leave us off with?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of afraid to get into the personal work, to get into their traumas because they're afraid they might not make it out on the other side. They're going to get stuck in a hole. And it's so worth it. Like, you're not going to get stuck. It's just so incredibly worth it. Like, I have so much more joy and love. And like, I feel like I've been unleashed doing the work versus like, I always felt so like small and I need to like make myself accepted, but nothing will make you feel accepted except for you.
Hmm. Girl, just pencil drop again because goodness, yes, you're absolutely right. No one can make you feel worth it besides yourself. That is a quote. Goodness, Heather. You have been dropping some great information. I'm so glad that you came on my show. Oh my goodness. Yes. This has been such a great time. If anybody wants to know more about Heather or just wants to reach out and just pick her brain some more and just see what she's up to, go follow her, go check out her websites. I have her lovely photo on mine. Just click right under it and you find it and you go right to it and you check all of her great content. I promise you, you won't get disappointed or be disappointed at all. So always, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.